Tonight, when it gets dark, you'll look down at a screen. You won't look up, and if you did, you'd see almost nothing. A few faint dots, washed out by the glow of the city. You are one of the first humans in 300,000 years who can't see the stars. So what did ancient humans think the stars were? Ask anyone today, and you'll get the same answer. Balls of burning gas, impossibly far away, fusion reactors the size of our sun scattered across light years of empty space. That's true. But it's not what your ancestors saw when they looked up. That's the answer to a question they never asked, because for almost everyone who has ever lived, the night sky wasn't a physics problem. It was a text, the first one humans ever read. A ceiling packed with fires, eyes, gods, and holes punched in a solid dome. Long before anyone wrote a word down, people looked up and saw a story already written for them. Your ancestors went to sleep under a sky we have almost completely lost. No light pollution, no screens, no street lamps washing out the dark. Just a black dome packed with thousands of stars, brighter and thicker than anything you've ever seen. The Milky Way wasn't a faint blur. It was a river of light splitting the sky in half, every clear night for an entire lifetime. And that single sky did the work of an entire civilization. It was the only calendar, the only map, and the only church anyone owned, all of it hanging there for free. Before the sky was a story, it was a tool. The same dots that looked like gods were also the most reliable machine our ancestors ever owned. A clock that never broke, a map you couldn't lose. Take the Pleiades, that little smudge of stars. When it rose just before dawn, it told farmers across the world the same thing. Time to plant, time to harvest. And the stars didn't just tell you when, they told you where. Find the right ones and you could fix north to within a few degrees. No compass required. Some researchers think this goes back further than we ever imagined. In the Lascaux caves in France, painted around 17,000 years ago, a cluster of 6 dots sits above the shoulder of a giant bull. Researcher Michael Rappengluck argues it's the Pleiades, a star map, older than writing itself. Nobody can prove the 6 dots are the Pleiades, but they sit right above the bull's shoulder, exactly where the cluster rides the constellation we now call Taurus. That's not nothing. For most of history, the sky was an empty space. It was a roof, a solid surface, hung just above the highest mountains, holding something back. The Babylonians wrote it down more than 3,000 years ago in the Enuma Elish. Their god Marduk kills a great sea monster named Tiamat and splits her body in 2. Half becomes the earth. The other half he stretches overhead as a vault, a dam to hold back the waters above the world. The Egyptians saw it differently, and somehow the same. To them the sky was a goddess nut, her body arched over the earth from horizon to horizon. The stars were lamps hung on her body, and gates were cut into the dome so the sun could slip through at dawn and vanish again at dusk. The cosmos wasn't a void, it was architecture. But ask many ancient peoples and the answer wasn't gas or gods. It was the dead. To the Zulu and the Ndebele, the stars were eyes, the eyes of ancestors who had died, watching the living from the dark. The ancient Egyptians saw the souls of the departed climbing into the sky, and that faint river of stars, the Milky Way, turns up again and again as a road for the dead. The San of southern Africa said it was ashes from a campfire, flung across the sky. Across North America, the Lakota and the Cheyenne saw a glowing road of campfires, lit so the dead could find their way home. Wildly separated peoples, who never met, all looked up and saw the same thing, the dead looking back. Here's the question nobody asks. Why does everyone do this? Why did people who never met on different continents all look at the same scatter of dots and draw the same kinds of pictures? The answer isn't up there. It's behind your eyes. Your brain is a pattern machine, desperate to find faces in noise. There's a patch of tissue on the underside of your brain, the fusiform gyrus, whose whole job is spotting them. It's why you see a face in a wall socket, in burnt toast, in the grill of a car. Scientists call it pareidolia, and it exists for a brutal reason. For our ancestors, missing a real face in the grass could get you killed. Seeing one that wasn't there cost nothing. So evolution turned the dial all the way up. Point that brain at 6 bright dots, and it cannot help itself. It sees sisters, it sees a hunter. The constellations were never up there. They're a feature of your visual cortex, projected onto the dark. Now look at one specific cluster, the Pleiades. Culture after culture that wrote it down saw the same thing. 7 sisters. 7. But here's the strange part. When you actually go outside and look, you can only count 6. And it isn't just the number that repeats, it's the whole story. In Greece, the Pleiades are the 7 daughters of the Titan Atlas, and a hunter named Orion is chasing them across the sky. To save them, Zeus turns them into stars, and even now you can see Orion behind them, still pursuing, never catching up. Travel to the other side of the planet, to Aboriginal Australia, and you find the same plot. 7 sisters, fleeing a man or a group of men who won't leave them alone. Europe, Africa, Asia, Native America, Australia, the same cluster, the same 7, the same chase, everywhere. So how old could a story like that be? In 2020, astronomer Ray Norris proposed an answer that sounds impossible. Maybe 100,000 years. Old enough to have been carried mouth to mouth out of Africa before humans scattered across the entire planet. Think about what that means. If the myth came first, then it survived ice ages. It survived oceans. It survived 1,000 generations and the birth and death of entire languages, told around campfire after campfire, almost unchanged. And then the data caught up to the myth. The European Space Agency's Gaia telescope has measured exactly how the stars of the Pleiades are drifting. Run the clock backwards 100,000 years, and 2 of them, Pleione and Atlas, sat far enough apart to be seen as 2 separate points of light, which means that back then, there really were 7 visible stars, not 6. 7. The missing sister isn't a metaphor. She's a memory. A star that slowly drifted out of view, and a story that watched it go and kept telling people about it for 100,000 years after it was gone. Before we get carried away, and this field gets carried away constantly, the 100,000-year story is an argument, not a fact. Maybe the myth wasn't passed down at all, and humans everywhere just see 7-ish bright stars and a hunter-shaped neighbor and invent the same tale over and over. The big headlines wobble too. The Nebra sky disk, often called the oldest map of the cosmos, had its age and meaning challenged in 2020. Göbekli Tepe's so-called oldest calendar is rejected by the very people digging it up. One scholar called this whole field high scholarship at one end, and, in his words, lunacy at the other. But even the skeptics admit the Pleiades story is everywhere, and that still needs explaining. But there's one thing nobody on either side argues about. For all our debating about what they thought the stars were, they saw a sky you will almost certainly never see in your life. For 300,000 years, the Milky Way wasn't a destination. It was just there. The ceiling over every human being, every clear night, from birth to death. Now look at where we live. More than a third of humanity can no longer see the Milky Way at all. For Europeans, it's 6 in 10, and for North Americans, nearly 8 in 10. The glow of our own cities has erased it. So we didn't just lose the myths, the sisters and the hunters and the roads for the dead. We lost the thing the myths were about. We took the most watched object in the history of our species, the one sight every single ancestor shared, and painted over it with a light we made ourselves. Every ancestor you have ever had looked up at those stars and saw something. A calendar, a road for the dead, 7 sisters running from a hunter who never gives up. They built their whole world around that ceiling. They planted by it, prayed to it, steered their lives by it, and the stars haven't gone anywhere. They still drift, they still burn, they still spell out a story older than language, hanging over your roof tonight, whether you look or not. We are the first humans who can't see them. We're also the first who don't need to. We swapped the oldest text ever written for a screen that glows back, and the stars are still up there, reading